just a moment. All right, looks like our numbers have slowed down a little bit. So while anybody who's not here yet can get notes from a friend and get caught up on their own. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm David Gallivan, the Compliance and Appeals Branch Manager here at the Division of Family and Medical Leave Insurance, which is part of the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. I'm joined by several members of the family team who are going to help answer questions, and from Ann Dooley, who will be covering some of our content here today. We're going to go over some new functionality today in the My Family Plus Employer portal, but we're really looking to save a lot of time to answer your questions. And we're going to answer as many questions as we can, as long as they're easy, in the next hour. But before we get started, I do have a couple of quick housekeeping things. First, this presentation is going to be available on the website. So if you want to listen to me over and over again, we'll just put this on repeat. You're going to be able to download it and access it off our website. We're also going to share a copy with everybody who's registered, and that's going to include the slide decks. So there's a lot of good information in there, and we're going to make sure that you all get a copy of it. Our chat today is disabled for you, not for us. You're going to see some staff members from Family dropping important links into the chat. But if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them into that Q&A box, and we'll get to them. We're going to be working on that as we go through. So just pop your questions in there and we'll do our best to get them all answered. And you can also find recordings of our previous webinars on our YouTube channel, and those are going to cover a variety of different topics. So feel free to look through those, and those are also all on our website. But let's go ahead and jump right in. Family's here. So many employers started taking payroll deductions on January 1st, and that's many, but we really do hope that that's all, because really any employer that's choosing to deduct from employee wages and not covering that employee portion on behalf of their employees really did need to start making those deductions on January 1st. And employers need to get registered in the My Family Plus employer portal. You're supposed to be registered by January 1st. If you haven't registered yet, you definitely need to make sure that you get registered by April 30th, because that's when those premium payments are due. Remember, part of my job title is compliance. So I'm really focused on those people who aren't in compliance and working up all sorts of fun, interesting ways to get them into compliance that you probably don't really want to experience. So get into that My Family Plus employer. That's our employer services portal, and use that to get yourself registered. If you're working with the TPA, check with them to make sure that they're getting you registered, or figure out what their plan is for that. We do have several user guides and how-to videos on our website. You can find that on the My Family Plus employer page, which is in the first drop-down menu under the employers tab. So take a look at that, make use of those guides, and do get registered and be prepared to pay those premiums. Now I'm going to hand it over to Ann Dooley. Ann is our family product owner, and she understands how this system works in a way that I never could. So we're going to have her talk about some of those system upgrades you'll notice in My Family Plus employer. So take it away, Ann.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Dooley, one of the product owners here on the family team. We did recently have another release in our system, and some of the new features do include a self-serve option to manage TPA and employer relationships, for full portal functionality in Spanish, and we also opened up a self-insured private plan application. Now, there is a function, the actual function to apply for approval for a private plan purchased by insurance carrier option will be added once the private plan marketplace opens up, which we'll get to here in a moment. Cool. So thanks for the next slide there. We do have reference guides on our website to go ahead and walk you through the step-by-step processes of editing your employer TPA relationship, as well as how to submit your self-insured private plan for approval. So we won't go through every screen here on this webinar, but here's a preview of one of the processes. So this one's the manage your TPA process, where as an employer, you can log into the portal and make adjustments or add your TPA in the system. system itself. I think we're going to go back to private plans and back to you, David.
Thanks for that, Anne. And we do have some really exciting news today. I woke up today feeling like it was my birthday. I'm just so excited to share this with you. We have the employer guide to private plans live now on our website for you to download and read. We're going to send you that link when we email you the slides. This is an amazing guide. It's been long in the works, 22 pages, chock full of information, a checklist of items you'll need to have handy if you're going to apply for a private plan approval, the forms and templates that you're going to need if you want to self-insure, all the details about the communications that you need to have with your employees. So we know that there are a lot of people out there who are interested in pursuing a private plan. And if you're not going to participate in the state-run family program, that's what you've got to do. You've either got to buy a private plan from an insurance company or you need to self-insure. And this is the guide that's going to show you how to do it. It's incredibly useful. It is just full of all those wonderful resources. I don't have kids, but I imagine if I did, they'd be asking me to read them this guide as a bedtime story every night. That's just how amazing this guide is. If you're at all interested in private plans, grab it, take a look at it. It'll walk you through the entire process. But I know you're thinking about that now, and you're wondering, okay, well, I'd like to do a private plan. Where do I get them? Where do I find them? And so I want to talk to you a little bit about the private plan marketplace. So the private plan marketplace is coming. We understand that you're eager to shop around and consider the private plan options from all sorts of different insurance carriers. We're not quite to the point yet of having you able to do that. You can file for approval with a self-insured plan now. And if you want to self-insure, get that guide, read those documents, and it'll have everything that you need to do that. But if you want to purchase a plan from an insurance carrier, what we're waiting for right now is the Division of Insurance to approve those plans. I found out this morning that we now have 4 plans pending over at the Division of Insurance. So we have 4 different insurers already who have said we want to come into Colorado and we want to offer these plans for people to, for employers to use. We expect, I'm hoping in the next 45 to 60 days to have those available on our website as part of the private plan marketplace. Once they get approved by the Division of Insurance, they're going to come over, they're going to get added to the My Family Plus employer. So again, that one website that you can come check out will have a list of all of those different private plans. You can take a look at it. You can compare what their options are, what their differences are, do that comparison shopping. I'll tell you right now, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I do think for most employers coming into the state system is probably going to be the best option. But for some of you out there, you're going to find one of those private plans that's going to work for you, and you're going to be able to find those on our website. Once you do, you're going to make that purchase from the insurer, and then you come back to My Family Plus employer and report that information, and we're going to take a look at that for you, and we'll either approve or deny it. And if it gets denied, we'll work with you to do what we need to do to get it approved, and then you'll be covered under the private plan. Now, I do think we are about a slide behind here. So yeah, the private plan marketplace is coming. And then go ahead and move forward today. If we don't get to your question today, and I can see we've had some staff members in that Q&A box answering questions. I really appreciate that because it keeps me from having to answer them here and possibly saying something wrong. We're going to have some more opportunities though if we don't get to your questions soon. So we're going to have more opportunities for you to come in and ask those. We're going to be doing a virtual town hall on February 28th and on March 21st. We're going to have 2 sessions, English, one in English from 11:30 to 12:30, and one in Spanish from 3:30 to 4:30. You'll be able to join online by phone. We're going to have links to that in our website, and you can follow up and in our follow-up email. You can also catch us on Facebook Live a couple times a month. Follow the Family Division on Facebook, and you'll get a little pop-up when we're about to go live. Those are 5 to 10 minutes. We normally do 2 or 3 questions. It's a lot of fun. I really like it. And it's a great way if you've got a question that you just really want to get answered that day. go ahead and pop on, find us live there on Facebook, or join us for that town hall. We really do enjoy answering questions, and we do enjoy hearing from you, from the people of Colorado who are going to be impacted by this. We have a bunch of different ways for you to engage with us. We've got our email address there, so you can send in questions, get a response back. You can follow us on most of the socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're not on TikTok yet. They keep threatening me that I'm going to have to do a dance at one of these, but so far that hasn't happened yet. We can all be a little bit thankful for that. But do follow us on those. Great information comes out there, particularly Facebook, again, with those lives. You can subscribe to our newsletter, and I really, really recommend you do that. We are in the year of implementation. We are building new features. We are turning them on, all to get ready for when benefits start being paid on January 1st of next year. And the newsletter is where you're going to find the latest updates on what's going on with the system and on where we are. So subscribe to that. And one thing that I do just want to add in here is if you subscribe to that newsletter, you follow us on those socials. When we do rule hearings, when we come out to change the rules that are going to govern the system, that's how you can find out. And we love getting your feedback on that. We love hearing from people who can point out things they like about our rules, more often things they don't like, but that's things that maybe we can fix and that we can address before it becomes a rule and legally binding. And so I love it when people participate in those rule hearings. I really encourage everybody to do that. If there's something that you want to tell us about our rules, come to that hearing, put it on the record. We take it very seriously. You can also give us a call. We got a number, 1-866-CO-FAMLI, FAMLI. Give us a call between 8 and 4. We have a call center and representatives who are very well trained and very smart, and will answer your questions as well. So those are all the great ways that you can get in touch with us. Thank you so much. And now we're going to go ahead and turn it over to answer a couple questions.
Thanks, David. I am going to select a few questions to help us get through this. Before we do any questions about private plans, because we've gotten a few, I'm hoping, David, you can clarify for the small business owners that are joining us today. There's been a few questions about small businesses that have 9 or fewer employees. There was one question asking whether or not an employer with 9 or fewer needs to get a private plan, or if they would, why would they get a private plan if they don't have to participate? And another asking, just for clarity in the requirements to participate, what actions these employers do need to take, even though they aren't responsible for the employer share of the premium. So could you clarify that for us?
Yeah, and that's the big difference. So an employer that has 10 or more employees has to participate, and they have to pay premiums. That premium is 0.9% of wages. And the employer has to pay half of that, 0.45%, and then can choose to deduct the other half of 0.45% from employee wages. So that's if you've got 10 or more employees. If you've got 9 or less, the premium is just 0.45%. The employer doesn't have to pay the employer share. They can either pay the employee share, or they can deduct that 0.45% from wages. So every private employer has to participate in the program. The difference is just what your premium is. And so for larger employers, it's 0.9% split between employer and employee. For small employers, it's 0.45%, and that can be paid entirely by the employee. And what was the second part of that question, Jessica?
Was if I had 9 or fewer employees, what would be the use case for considering a private plan? But I think the underlying question was the misunderstanding that they didn't have to participate at all.
Yeah, and you definitely could consider a private plan. I'm waiting to see what those plans are as they get approved, but my expectation, knowing what I know about self-insurance, is that those private plans are going to offer cost savings for very large employers, that administering the program for smaller employers is probably not going to be cost effective. And so you probably do want to take a long look at what you would be paying for that private plan versus the premiums that you would be paying into the state plan.
Thanks, David. We have a question here from Mia about private plans. If the employer offers an employer-sponsored plan and an employee declines and chooses a private plan, what responsibility does the employer have to the employee in regards to private plan resources? So can you clarify the private plan requirements?
Yeah, so again, there's three options. You're either going to participate in the state system, you're going to have an approved private plan from a vendor, or you're going to self-insure. And regardless of what approach you take, that has to cover every employee. There's not really an opportunity to opt out. An employee can't say, well, I don't want to participate in this plan. The participation is for all employees in the state of Colorado. And so they're going to need to be a part of that. We are working on some additional rules and guidance for other types of employer leave that aren't necessarily that private plan, but things like if you have a short-term disability plan or you offer PTO, we're working on guidance for that. But really, you're going to have a paid family medical leave program supplied in one of those three ways that covers all of your employees.
Thanks, David. Michael is asking if you can provide some general context as to why the state program might be the better route for most employers.
All right, and this is a little bit of me editorializing, and it's a little bit because, hey, I work here at the state program, so obviously it's better. You know, having David involved in your program makes it just that much better. But what you really want to look at for this is the state program is statewide. And so there are going to be situations where you have an employee who's working multiple jobs or a relatively new employee, and that's always going to bring issues into getting the information that you need to resolve a claim from a prior employer. Now, we here at the state, we have that information, and we're going to be working on ways to share that information with private plans, but there's just that additional level of administration. And particularly if you were to compare this to, say, being self-insured, where you're going to have to administer claims and have an adjudication process and an appeals process, and what those private plans are going to have with the same adjudication and appeals process, all of that's included in the family plan. So for large employers, again, there may be some cost savings to bring it in, particularly if you have a robust internal program. You know, there are people out there who self-insure for workers' compensation who have in-house workers' comp adjusters, and that makes it worthwhile. They get those cost savings from it. But the costs of administering a program of this size, they're paid for with your family premiums if you participate in the state program. And so it could well end up being a little bit cheaper. So I definitely encourage people to shop around, but keep in mind at the back of your head that you always have that option of the employer's shares 0.45% of wages. And for that, you have a program that has experts who are going to be looking at claims and reviewing their medical documentation, the basis for the claims. You're going to have hearing officers who can do appeals. You're going to have statewide information. You're just going to have a lot of resources here at the state that are going to be available to answer your questions. I think right now, if you call our call center, you're going to be waiting to talk to a call representative for about the time it takes for them to hit the answer button. So, you know, there's no wait to get in and get those questions answered. And again, you got me. So it's always just going to be a little bit better.
Thanks, David. Here's another question that you can answer pretty quickly. Do you need or expect to conduct any additional rulemaking for the program this year?
Yeah, so we've got two big rules that are going to be coming out. One of those is the retaliation and interference rule. We're working on that. I'm hoping to have that noticed or at least out for informal comment toward the end of March. So that'll govern the procedures when somebody complains that there's been retaliation for filing a claim or interference with a right. Then we're also going to be working on program integrity rules. So those are the rules that help us make sure that employers are paying what they're supposed to pay and help us address a little bit the concerns around fraud from improper claims. And with that, we are going to also be anticipating toward the end of the year one last cleanup. of these rules. So we're going to go through, identify issues in the existing rules that were adopted last year. Some areas where there might be some confusion about the way it was worded, some areas where the policy approach has changed. That is not going to be anything major. Nobody should be setting their hair on fire, getting really concerned about what those rules are going to look like. We're just going to be doing tweaks to try to make them better. And that will happen toward the end of the year. But also, again, we do love getting that input. And if you're looking at our current rules and saying, hey, this doesn't make sense, reach out and let us know. And it goes into the list of, is this something that we need to review before January 1st?
Thanks, David. I'm actually going to move down to Carlos. He's got a question for Anne. Carlos works for Accountants World. They provide a payroll SASS to accountants and small payroll service bureaus. I'm trying to dig out a question here. Carlos are geared more towards one, bulk electronic fund transmittal of premiums. Will there be a quarterly compliance form, or are you modifying the current state employment form to include family? Will e-file be supported? So Anne, I'm wondering if you could just quickly go over some of the resources that we have for TPAs and transmitters, and go from there.
Sure. Yeah, that's a big message there. Bulk electronic fund transmittal of premiums. So we are set up and we have some information out there in regards to payments. We are doing through the NACHA network, the ACH credit payments. So if you have up to 3,000 employers in Colorado, you can use that method to complete the premiums payments. Will there be a quarterly compliance form? Are you modifying? We are operating separately than the state unemployment insurance. So we do have information on how to complete your wage reporting for each of those employers and do a bulk filing through our portal, either through a file upload. The formats are XML and CSV, or also there's a request process if you wanted to go ahead and work through your technology team to build an API, and you can file wage reports through an API through the state, through the family portal or family system. Hopefully that covers. And if there are other questions, David earlier mentioned different ways that you can connect with us, and we can work through any of those other outstanding questions.
Yes, thank you, Anne. Carlos, if we didn't cover anything, feel free to reach out and we can get you connected to answer your TPA related questions. But I do just want to reiterate that anything that you are submitting for unemployment right now, this will be separate for family. So you will have to submit your quarterly wage reports and the premium payments for your Colorado employers separately in the family portal. I also wanted to just go back to a few questions from small businesses. There was another one, anonymous question. If our company is small and does not need to participate, but has an unlimited time off policy that is more generous than the state plan, can we become exempt from family? So yeah, David, just clarifying the actions that you do need to take to get that approval.
Yeah, so there's two things that we need to answer here. The first is, again, the size of the company doesn't necessarily matter with regard to participation. It doesn't matter how many employees you have to have one of those three options. You have to participate in the state system, you have to purchase a private plan, or you have to self-insure. Now, there's some possibility that if you have an existing policy of unlimited time, that we would be able to look at that, and there may be a way for you to work with us and get to a point where we can approve a self-insurance situation. It's not as easy though as saying, well, unlimited time off, because you do have to have some security, you have to have a surety bond, and we do have to make sure that you are providing the same or better benefits than what we do. So if there's restrictions on what you can use the leave for, for example, if you got a policy that you can use it for yourself, but you can't use it if you have a family member or somebody in a family type relationship who you need to care for, or you don't have provisions to allow people to take this leave if they are preparing for deployment or assisting a family member who's preparing for deployment, then it's not quite going to line up. So really, the best way to look at this is go get that employer guide to the private plan and look at the forms and requirements to be self-insured. And then you can work from that to see if there's a way that you can take your existing policy and have it fit into that round hole of being the same or better than family to get approval.
Thanks, David. There's another question here from Amy. She's asking, how is the 9 or less calculated if your workforce changes throughout the year? For example, a farmer who may have a larger workforce during harvest season.
Right. And so what we do an employee count when you report your wages. And so we're going to take a look at that and take that kind of snapshot in time. So we do know that there are seasonal employers who have workforces that fluctuate, and we want to be mindful of the reality of that world. We're talking here about agricultural workers. It's the same up in ski country, where you're going to have that shifting workforce. But we're going to take that look when you register, when you report wages on the quarter, and that's how we're going to figure that out. And so we're going to look at those various points in time where we take the snapshot, and that's going to set what your requirement is from that point moving forward until the next point where we take that snapshot.
Thanks, David. We have several questions here about short-term disability plans and even PTO plans and how all of those coordinate with family. What's the guidance for employers? For example, can you share why employees should continue to enroll into STD insurance if family will be available to them and their employer is already paying for family, or they have access to family? Another question about how we will ensure there's no double dipping in regards to short-term disability plans, coordination of benefits if they do run concurrently.
Yeah, and so let's start with the double dipping issue. And we're really not going to be addressing that. That is something that the employer can address in their policy, and the provider of the short-term disability plan can both look at that and make the decisions that are right for them. This could well be a situation where those providers of those plans, employers, are going to say that you pick up your short-term disability after you've exhausted family leave. Remember, family leave is also only a portion of your wages. And so those short-term disability plans could be used as a make whole to bring somebody back up to 100% of their wages. Or it could be something that it's worth it for the employer to look at and decide, is this still a benefit that I want to provide, given that we are paying into the state system? And that was really one of the intents behind the creation of this state-run system, was that it would be a cost savings for employers, that it would be cheaper for an employer to pay this premium and to participate in the state-run family program, which is a statewide social insurance program. So, you have the costs spread out that way, than it would be to provide short-term disability. And it would also let those employers who were unable to afford short-term disability programs for their employees have something that they could offer there. So it's something really to look at as an employer and determine, does this short-term disability plan add anything to our workforce? And do we need to continue it? Is there a way that we can adapt it to coordinate better with family? We don't have any authority underneath the authorizing act to deny somebody family benefits because they're also receiving short-term disability. So we can't amend anything on our end, but employers and short-term disability providers can look at it and say, well, we want to either limit it so that you aren't double dipping, so you can only use it as a make whole, or to consider again if it's a program that you would want to continue offering, because it might be worth it to grab those cost savings and to rely on the family program.
Thank you, David. We have an anonymous question here. If an employer is choosing to have a state administered plan, so participating in family, can its employees still choose not to file a claim with family? For instance, if the employee prefers their employer's benefits over the state plan, but the employer's benefits don't technically meet or exceed the requirements. So they have the option of doing both.
Yeah, and there's no requirement to say, oh, you have to go file a claim with family. There is a requirement for employers. If you find out that you have an employee who might be eligible, they might have a family claim. So, somebody comes to you and says, having a baby, what do I do? Or I need to go have surgery. I'm going to be out for a while. What do I do? You need to give them information about the family program so they know that they can file a claim. But we're not going to force anybody to file a claim. And really, employers can't do that either. But all that said, one thing that it's worth noting is besides the payments, the benefits, one of the things that family does is provides job protection. So when somebody's out on leave under the Family Act, they can't be terminated. They have to be returned to the same or substantially similar position when they come back from that leave. That covers the duration of leave. So if somebody comes in and says, oh, hey, I might need to be out for an extended period of time because I have this health condition or family member has this health condition, if they don't file a family claim, that amount of time that they have job protection under the Family Act hasn't started running yet. And so there's some value to the employer to really encourage people to take this leave when they're eligible for it. Because if you have somebody who comes in and, let's say like me, I've worked for the state for a number of years, I've got a really decent leave bank. I say, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to take the next 6 weeks and I'm going to burn through all my accrued sick leave. And then at the end of that, they say, I'm not ready to go back yet. Now I'm going to go apply for family. That takes it from 12 weeks that my job is protected under the Family Act to now 18 weeks that I've been out, because that 12 weeks didn't start till I filed that claim. And so it can be really worthwhile, just kind of like the federal FMLA. It can be really worthwhile to encourage employees to file those claims because you want that clock to start ticking for them so that they have their leave, they get their benefits, they get their money, but at the same time, they're not extending it using PTO or other benefits. So really, it's worth it sometimes to encourage an employee to file that claim and to have things running concurrently.
Thanks, David. We have a question here about localization, or this is an out-of-state employer. If you are a Florida employer but have less than 10 employees working in Colorado, do you have to pay the employer premium portion?
Yeah, so for the employee count, we look at employees nationwide. So it's all employees. You only have to pay for those employees who are in Colorado. But really, the reason why we have that cutoff between the 9 and the 10 employees is so that smaller businesses aren't overburdened by the cost of this program. And if there's a company out there that has 1,000 employees, but only 3 of them working in Colorado, they're not really a smaller employer. They are a large employer who needs to be treated as such underneath the law, even though they only have a couple of employees in Colorado. So yeah, we do look nationwide. So the question is, how many employees do you have across the country or in total, even if you've got international employees? And that's what we're going to look at to determine the size of your employer and whether you've got to pay the 0.9 or the 0.45. But again, you only pay for the employees who work in Colorado.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Another anonymous question here, switching gears a little bit. What safeguards are in place for preventing fraud and delays in payment?
Yeah, and that we're working through that with developing those systems. We're working with some vendors to get tech solutions in. This is something that we have the ability to learn a little bit from what happened nationwide with unemployment insurance over the past few years, because we did see that there was an explosion of fraud. But with that came a lot of solutions to what was going on in 2021, 2022 that we're able to look at now. So we're starting with technical solutions that are going to be looking at initial claims to make that determination. Is this person real? Is this person who they say they are? Is this employer real? is the doctor who's signing off on this reel. And so we start with the tech issues, then those files come in for a little bit more personalized review. If there's anything suspicious, it can get flagged to have somebody else take a little bit deeper dive into it. And then we are going to have a team of fraud investigators and overpayment people to try to make sure that we're not issuing those payments, but that if we do, we're able to go back and recover them and when appropriate, make referrals for criminal prosecution. So there are plans in the works to go through that to try to catch as much as we can. And we're starting with that technical solution.
Thank you, David. We have a question here from some of our streaming audience in regards to private plans. The context is we understand that if an employee's family claim is denied by a private plan and they disagree with that determination issued, the employee may submit an appeal to the private plan. The questions are, how long does an employee have to an appeal with a private plan? And how long does the private plan have to make a determination on that appeal? So I'm wondering, David, if you could go over the appeals process, because that employee can also appeal to the division if their private plan denies their claim, correct?
They can. And so that's a really important thing to note, that if a claim is denied by the private plan has to have an internal process for appeals. And the employee can go through that and then come to the state, or they can come to us with that initial appeal. We did look at that, and there just wasn't a way under the system for us, underneath the authorizing statute, to direct things through a private plan completely. Everybody has to have their recourse to the courts or a reasonable semblance thereof, which is what our appeals program is going to be. In terms of the specific timelines, I got to tell you, I do not remember those off the top of my head, and I don't want to say anything inappropriate, but I do know that we have adopted rules on the appeals process, and the family and any private plan would have to follow those same timelines for both the amount of time for a employee to file that appeal and for the amount of time to issue that ruling. And so those are out there in the rules. And I just managed to get to 3.10, which has those in there. So yeah, so you've got 45 days from the initial benefit determination to file an appeal. And so that's our system, but you wouldn't be able to, in a private plan, to restrict that to less than 45 days. You would have to be able to provide that. And that can go to 60 days with good cause. And then we're going to have hearing officers who are going to review that. And we do not actually have timelines for the response from the hearing officer. And so that may be something, again, that we're going to be looking at with those cleanups at the end of the year to make sure that both our program and any private plans are getting those decisions out time.
Thank you, David. I'm going to try to give David a little bit of a break here before we get to some more wages questions, but there have been a few questions about will there be an employee guidebook on how to use the system near year end? The answer is yes, similarly to how we've provided a step-by-step user guides from My Family Plus Employer. The benefit system in which employees will use to apply for their claims will be an entirely different system. So we will have user guides and how-to videos on how to file a claim towards the end of the year before that system is up and running. There were a couple questions about getting copies of this presentation and the slide deck. We will be posting the slide deck and the recording to our website, as well as sending it out to everyone who registered here. So you will get a copy of this recording in addition to the slide deck. It's unlikely that we'll get to answer every single question here. So we'll review all of your questions and publish updates to our existing Q&As on our website as best we can in the coming weeks. And with that, I am going to switch back over to a few more questions for David. There were a few questions about wages. One specifically for an employer who submits their wage reports and premiums for unemployment. The question is, can they use that same report for family? That might be a question for Corey and or Ann in terms of wage reporting file specifications. Corey, can you take that one?
Oh, sorry, I fixed my
Ann.
Zoom.
Go ahead.
I think there's similar field level data for the information that's sent to my UI versus family, but it is a separate report that has different attributes that need to be submitted on a quarterly basis.
And we have all of those file specifications and sample templates on our website, on both our employer page and our TPA page. So there might be a little bit of changes between the reports that you file for unemployment and family. But in regards to wages, David, there have been some questions about whether or not employer contributions to a medical savings account is considered wages for family premium purposes. Other things that might be considered wages. And I know your team has been working on defining that more clearly. Is it the same exact thing as unemployment? If you could give us some clarity there.
Mostly the same as unemployment, but let's take that example of a medical savings account. Employer contributions to a third party on behalf of an employee are not considered wages. So if the employee is being paid something, that's part of the wages, and benefits or premiums will be calculated based on that. If an employer is contributing to retirement accounts, medical savings accounts, making that contribution for a very specific purpose, those are generally not going to be considered wages.
Thanks, David. And I have another question here for Ann. Just a general question. How can I register as a third party who helps multiple small businesses with their payroll and taxes? And can you direct folks to where they can learn more?
Well, we have the TPA page on the family.gov site for that individual that operates as a third-party administrator for a series of small businesses. They can go ahead and register themselves as a TPA/PEO organization type. And then from there, they can, if it's just a handful, manually register for those employers that they service, or they can work with those client employers of yours, have them register, and then they can link your TPA record to theirs. And that way you can support or provide filings on their behalf in that kind of manner.
Thank you, Ann. Here's a question from Vanessa. When an employee is eligible for FMLA, we as an employer ask that they make benefit premium arrangements with payroll to prevent loss or gap of benefits. Is there any such requirement when filing for family?
Yeah, so benefits are supposed to be continued, but what you've been doing under FML in terms of arranging for those payments as an appropriate path forward when somebody's taking family leave as well. We're not going to be making any deductions out of the benefits. And if you're participating in the state program, remember, we're the ones who are going to be processing those payments. That's one of the administrative burdens that our program takes on so that you don't have to. But we're going to be making payments directly to the employee. So if there is an ongoing cost for those benefits that would typically be paid out of a payroll deduction, the employee and the employer can make those arrangements. And if you have a process in place for that to happen under FML, that's great. Every employer should, just because it does make it so much easier, and you can continue to use that same process.
Thanks, David. A couple more FMLA coordination of benefit questions. Going back to the example of an employee taking 6 weeks off from the employer leave and then applying for family and getting 18 weeks, does this mean the employer could apply for the employee or make the employee apply so they can't take more than 12 weeks?
Yeah, and I want to apologize. That was a bad example. I should have said 4 weeks instead of 6 weeks. Because employees really are required to file, if they want to use family, they are required to file within 30 days of knowing about the reason for the leave. And so if somebody goes beyond that, so if they take 4 weeks, that's 28 days and they're still within that. If they go beyond that, then there could be an issue and they may not be eligible for family anymore. But there really is no ability under the act for anybody to force somebody to come use this benefit. Employees need to raise their hands and say, I want it, but they do have to come in and make that application within 30 days of knowing or of the leave starting. So if somebody's out on leave, unless there's some variety of a dramatic change, which, it's possible. Somebody, they get sick, they think they got a cold, they take a week off, and then it turns out that it's COVID and their symptoms get substantially worse. We're probably going to be looking at the point where they realized they were going to need extended leave, not the first day they took off. But it really should be filed within 30 days. So you could conceivably still have that situation where somebody is taking 4 weeks of leave, then they're coming in and they're filing their family application. And that would be something we'd have to look at in terms of the award of leave and if it would be retroactive. But there isn't a way for the employer to say you have to go file for family.
Thank you, David. We have a question here from Michael. Does family require the employee to notify their employer either immediately or within a few days of submitting a family claim?
We don't have a requirement for the employee to do that, but we will. So once we get a claim, we will confirm with the employer that the claim has been filed. As it moves through our adjudication process, there's an opportunity for the employer to submit information. If you're like, this person never actually worked for us, or what do you mean this person's having a kid? I'm pretty sure that's not true. So that information can be submitted. And once a determination is made, if there's an award of benefits and leave, we will communicate that to the employer to come back and say, yeah, this person's going to have leave that's approved for this period of time. So you will know. You're not going to have employees taking leave in secret, but rather than relying on the employee to do that at a time where they may well be in some variety of personal crisis in their life, we're going to be providing that notification. So you will hear from us when a claim is filed and when there has been a adjudication of that.
Thanks, David. An anonymous question here that I think could use some clarification. Do I need to file anything with the state of Colorado if my employee is exempt and we have already made contributions? So employees are not exempt, but go ahead, David.
Yeah, and exempt is one of those words to somebody who works at the Department of Labor and Employment that makes their ears perk up because it can mean lots of different things. And so there's a little bit of clarification there because employees are covered. And so if we're talking about the Federal Labor Standards Act, the FLSA, and that's where we normally would use the term exempt or non-exempt, which is in a very broad sense, do you get overtime or not? That really doesn't make a difference for family. You're still going to be, the employee is still going to be participating in the plan. And then nobody really is exempt from participation in the family program. So it may be if that individual wanted to put a little bit more clarification in, we could get a better answer. But that's the best I can say with what we've got right now.
Thank you, David. We've gotten this question come in a few times, not just in this webinar, but through our email. For example, let's say you have an employee or you are an employee who is due to have a child in, let's say, August, November of 2023, would that birthing person be able to take FMLA for the remainder or a chunk of time in 2023 and then have the 12 weeks of family start in January 2024?
Yeah, and I just want to start by saying I love this question. I started out my legal career working with victims of domestic violence. Then I was a divorce lawyer. Then I was a workers' compensation judge. So if you were dealing with me, it was not your day, your week, your month, or even your year. And at FAMLI, yeah, I'm going to be working with people who are having serious health conditions, but it is just so wonderful to be able to be here for something that's good news for people. Like maybe the day that David Gallivan does something on your claim isn't the worst day of your life. And that's a good feeling for me at this point in my career. But so let's talk about this with how is this going to work with FMLA and FAMLI. And this is a one-time only deal. I'm going to describe a situation to you, and that only works in 2023. So normally FMLA and FAMLI are going to run concurrently. So starting next January, if you've got an application for FAMLI, that's going to run concurrently with any of your unpaid federal leave. So they all run together. But this year in 2023, FAMLI doesn't exist yet as benefits. So you could still have a qualifying event under the federal Medical Leave Act, the FMLA. You could take that leave, and then when you come in on January 1st, you would then be eligible to file a new claim for benefits. So even if the leave had started more than 30 days, that's not really going to apply in this situation because you couldn't apply for those benefits. And so there could be an opportunity to take unpaid leave under FML in 2023 and then still qualify for your full amount of family leave in 2024. But again, that's a one-time only deal to do that right now, and it's because FAMLI doesn't exist. Once the program is available, once you can apply for benefits, then you would need to, and those are going to run concurrently.
Thanks, David. I was just going to say, looking forward, and I think you just answered this, but a couple of folks have asked, let's say it's already 2024, family benefits are available. If you're having a child in 2024 and beyond, can you take family for the 12 weeks and then FMLA later in that 12-month rolling period or FMLA first and then family later, since family is eligible for the birth of your child for that first 12 months of life?
Yeah, and underneath our authorizing statute, the two kinds of leave do run concurrently. So you really do need to be filing your applications, taking both of those leaves at the same time. I am not an expert in the federal system, so I don't want to say that you couldn't possibly do that, but you would be definitely running a risk of having, if you come in and take family leave for 12 weeks and then you go apply for FML, you'd be running the risk of having that second request for leave denied under the program because you had already taken the 12 weeks of leave. And if you did that the other way around, if you took FML, I'm not sure. We'd have to go back and look at that because you are eligible to take that 12 weeks within the first year. So it could conceivably be possible, but that's something that I could imagine would lead to litigation down the line. It really is designed to run concurrently.
Thanks, David. And we just had a question come in, just an overview of FMLA and FMLA, the federal one, and family is a state run. Why do we have to have both? So if you can just give general guidance on the difference between family and FMLA.
Yeah, so you have to have both because you have to have both. Federal law says for most employers, there is a cutoff there on employer size, but for most employers, you have to offer that job. You have to have that job protection. So if somebody's taking qualified leave under the federal act, federal law says you've got to give them that job protection and you've got to let them come back to work when they're finished with that leave. There's nothing that we can do as the state government to alter that. We can't come in and say, well, that doesn't apply anymore, or it doesn't apply in Colorado. The federal government has said that's the rule, so that's what we've all got to follow. But the state government came in, and I say the state government, it was actually about 60% of the voters in the state of Colorado who voted on this proposition to put this into our law have said, well, in addition to that federal leave, we want to have the state program that's going to offer paid benefits that is also going to have this job protection ability. But we want these two forms of leave to run concurrently. So really, from a practical standpoint, you don't have both. You're going to need to have still your documentation and your administration of FMLA leave, but it should be running concurrently with the family leave. So somebody's only taking leave once, and they're getting what they're entitled to under both state and federal law.
Thanks, David. We are running low on time, so we can probably squeeze in a few more questions. There is one here about self-insured private plans I want to get to. Does the private and/or self-insured employer plan have to be offered to all employees or only Colorado employees?
Only Colorado employees. So yeah, I got to tell you, my answer to that question shifted as it was being asked. Because does it apply to all employees? Yes. You got to treat all your employees the same. And so you can't have a situation where you have some employees who are under a private plan or self-insured private plan and some employees who are under the state system. But then my answer changed because we got that last little clause in there. Colorado or nationwide, all of this only applies to Colorado employees. Now, so if you got a private plan, and that private plan says, yeah, we can offer these benefits nationwide, and you want to offer those benefits, great, you're a wonderful employer. Send me your contact information. I want to come apply to work for you, because that's a really generous thing to do, and it's great. So you can do that, but as far as our program is concerned, your only requirement is to provide that to employees in Colorado. So what I should say is all of your Colorado employees have to be treated the same. They all have to be covered under the same plan, but that doesn't apply out of state.
Thanks, David. We have one more question that I want to answer before we sign off. That's sort of related. Our company has employees who live in Wyoming, but will go into Colorado to work on projects. These employees pay Colorado state taxes on earnings. However, we pay unemployment through Wyoming. Are they required to be covered under FAMLI? To clarify, we do not pay unemployment on these employees. I'm assuming they do not pay unemployment in Colorado on these employees since they're paying it to Wyoming.
Yeah, and this is giving me flashbacks to a law school exam where you've just got all of these different factors that play into it. And I'm going to go have a little cry in a little bit because that's bringing back some memories. But for our purposes, it is really fact specific on what is that employee doing in Colorado? How long are they in Colorado? So, there's a situation, I know we dealt with this a couple of years ago with people who hauled gasoline in tanker trucks. And they would occasionally come into Colorado from Wyoming to fill up at the then open and operational Suncor refinery and go back to Wyoming. But that wasn't a regular part of their job. They only did that if gas was cheaper in Colorado than it was in Wyoming. And that's just a really kind of brief tangential contact with Colorado. So there's an argument that then they wouldn't be Colorado employees. But if somebody is routinely and frequently performing business actions in Colorado, they are performing significant elements of their work in Colorado, then they are a Colorado employee. And there's guides on our website underneath the employer section in our toolkit, and I think in our FAQs for localization that can even give you this flow chart. And I know someplace on that website, we do have a beautiful full color flow chart to help employers walk through that exact question. So it's way easier for you to answer than it was for me to answer when Professor Singer asked me that at Rutgers in 2004. So go check out those things. And the issue again, though, is it is so fact specific that we've got to look really at what's your company doing, what are your employees doing as far as the work in Colorado. So there isn't an easy answer there. I wish I could tell you that it's, yeah, if you spend more than X amount of hours working in Colorado, you're covered. But I'm a lawyer and we're just not allowed to give out those kind of easy answers because then we wouldn't have a job anymore. So go check our website. walk through that localization flowchart. And once you do that, if you've got some other questions, what I would suggest is use that email address and send in the detailed questions as it actually applies to your workforce. And we might be able to give you some more specific information. And I do just really want to say thank you to Michelle, who, while I'm talking, found that flowchart and put the link in the chat. So take a look at that, click that link, and hopefully that will help you answer the questions as it's going to apply in your world.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. We will send out all the links that Michelle has provided here in our follow-up email that will include a recording and the slide deck as well. I do also want to remind everyone that we have another statewide virtual town hall next week. So please go and register for that if we didn't get to your question today. We will include that registration link in our follow-up email as well. And I also just want to recognize that we had a lot of questions about small businesses, employers with 9 or fewer employees. We will also have a small business guide dedicated for these small business related questions on your requirements, your obligations, what actions you need to take as an employer. Publishing later this week. It will be included in our newsletter that goes out next week. So if you have not subscribed to our newsletter, please do that now so you can get your hands on that small business guide as soon as it is ready. But with that, I will say thank you to everyone who participated. Thank you for your questions. This was a great conversation. Thank you, David, for being our subject matter expert, as well as Anne for giving us an update on the tech and providing us tech guidance as well. So we will see you all next week.